Hello, my name is Sabina Mohyuddin. I'm the Executive Director of the American Muslim Advisory Council. I'd like to welcome you here today to learn more about how to interact with our new Afghan allies coming to Middle Tennessee. First of all, I want to say thank you for stepping up and volunteering to help the Afghans who are arriving here, who need some guidance and some friendship in our community. Nashville has been a welcoming place for new refugees, new immigrants, and we want to continue that tradition. So today, we're going to just give you some pointers so you understand the families you're helping out and understand their cultural and religious needs. I will be giving part of it, and then we will have Hangama Wahidi, who is the president of the Afghan Association here in Nashville, and Homa Rehmani, an Afghan community activist in Knoxville, who's been working with refugees. So first I'd like to say Assalamu alaikum, which means may God's peace be with you, and it's just a common Muslim greeting that we have. And so I wanted to just start off, when you're dealing with someone that is different than you, and you want to be respectful of who they are, their cultural background, and their religious background. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Islam, because most of the refugees who are coming at this time are Muslims. So it's good. There's a lot of misunderstanding about what Muslims believe in and what their practices are, and some of the norms that they have. So I'm just going to go briefly over it. So all Muslims, and there are different sects of Islam, but all Muslims will believe in 6 basic beliefs, and that is belief in one God, or in Arabic, the name of God is Allah, but that's no different than saying God in English. We believe in the angels, we believe in the prophets, we believe that we believe in Prophet Noah, Prophet Abraham, Jesus, and the same prophets you find in the Bible are actually in the Muslim Holy Scripture, the Quran, and we believe that Muhammad is the last prophet sent to earth. We believe in the scriptures sent by God, like the Torah, the Gospel, and we believe the Quran is the last scripture that God sent to earth. And it was sent to Prophet Muhammad. Muslims believe in a day of judgment, they believe in heaven and hell, and they believe in divine decree. The Quran is the final revelation that Muslims believe in, and it's the Muslim holy book, and it's in Arabic. So you will find Muslims around the world, even if they cannot speak Arabic, they know how to recite Arabic verses to say their prayers, or they know how to read the Quran in Arabic. So it is something that you will find every Muslim family has a copy of the Quran, and nowadays with smartphones, they have it on their phones, but they recite prayers in Arabic. So it's important to know the basic practice of Muslims, and we call this the 5 pillars of Islam. So the first pillar is the testimony of faith, that you actually say that you believe in the oneness of God, there's only one true God, and that Muhammad is the messenger and prophet of God, and he was a human being, he was a servant of God. Muslims say 5 daily prayers. They fast during the month of Ramadan. They pay a zakat, or a charity, which is 2.5% of their savings. And once in a lifetime, if they can afford it and if they're healthy enough, they make a pilgrimage to Mecca, Saudi Arabia. So a little bit more about the practices Muslims have that you will probably be seeing, and the Afghans you'll be working with or probably do in their day-to-day lives. But just to make it clear, it doesn't mean that every Afghan follows all the rules of Islam. Just like in Christianity, not everyone does everything. But the 5 daily prayers is probably something you've seen on TV. But Muslims pray 5 times a day, once before dawn, and then in the afternoon, then late afternoon, after the sun sets, and at night. And basically, you can pray at home, or if you're at work, you pray at work. Kids who are at school, they have the right to say their prayers in private when the prayer time comes during school. And during the prayer, a Muslim will have usually a prayer rug, and they lay it down facing towards Mecca, Saudi Arabia, and they recite verses of the Quran. So it's a series of movements where you're standing and you're prostrating in the ground, and it usually takes about 5 to 10 minutes each prayer. And so that is something. It's a part of a Muslim's daily life, and so a lot of times we think about if we're out too long in the afternoon, whether it's for school or work or even shopping, we'll think about how can we make sure we say our prayers so we can get home or to a mosque in time for a prayer. On Fridays, there's the special Jummah prayer, Friday prayer. Friday is for Muslims our Sabbath, and so Muslims, instead of praying the afternoon prayer individually, they come together for congregational prayer at the mosque. And in most mosques, it's at 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and it lasts about a half an hour to an hour total. And there's a sermon by the imam or the leader of the prayer or the mosque, and it's something that is required for all adult Muslim males. So people always make sure they have that time to go pray that Friday prayer at the mosque. And if somebody's working, usually they'll go pray during lunchtime, or they'll take an hour off of work and make it up later. During the month of Ramadan, Muslims fast. And so the Islamic calendar is a lunar calendar, and so it's about 10 to 11 days shorter than the calendar that we use. So the days of Ramadan will always be changing throughout the year. So this year, Ramadan should start on April 3rd, and it's during the fast. So Muslims fast each day during Ramadan, and it lasts for a month. But during the fast, they wake up before the sun rises, and over an hour before the sunrise, eat a meal, and then all day they don't eat or drink anything until sunset. And that's when they break their fast with a special meal. And a lot of times they do it either with family, or they go to the mosque and break their fast with community. It's also a time of special prayers in the mosque. So a lot of people go to the mosque more often during the month of Ramadan. And the whole idea is to develop God consciousness. So you keeping away from eating, it helps you remember God more and try to be a better person. So during Ramadan, you can't eat or drink anything, but Muslims have dietary restrictions throughout the year. So Muslims don't eat any pork or any pork products. So bacon, lard, pepperoni, sausage, one of the ingredients people don't think about, but gelatin oftentimes have pork in it. So Muslims sometimes, depending on how particular you are, will be will look at the ingredients and make sure there's no animal byproducts or pork products in it. Muslims don't drink any alcohol. Their drugs are forbidden, and but one thing people don't think about is Muslims eat halal meat, and it's kind of like kosher meat. Another word, actually, it's a better word, more specific word, is zabiha, and it's the way the animal is slaughtered that we say it makes it religiously acceptable for us. So in Nashville, there are a number of halal meat markets, and that's where people like to go to fulfill their dietary needs. There are two major Islamic holidays you should be aware of. So at the end of Ramadan, after denying yourself food and drink all day long, and it gets very tiring as the month goes on, everyone looks forward to celebrating the end of Ramadan, and that's called Eid al-Fitr. And this year, Eid al-Fitr should be on May 3rd. And so it's a day where we have special morning services, and then family cook special meals and share it with others and exchange presents. And the second major holiday is Eid al-Adha, and that's during the 10th month of it's the 10th day in the month of Hajj. So when others are going to Mecca, Saudi Arabia to perform the Hajj, people at home, they celebrate, and they always sacrifice an animal and share the meat with family and friends. So those holidays, some cultures, they celebrate one day, but it is technically a 3-day holiday. So, a lot of people have questions about how Islam treats women. And they're always asking, they always see women as being oppressed in Islam. But are they oppressed? In the Quran, actually, God says very specifically that men and women are equal before God, that the reward for a good deed for a man is equal to a reward for a good deed for a woman. And it's very specific. Women have rights to education. In America, 73% of American Muslim women have a bachelor's degree or higher. And that is a higher percentage than the general population of women in America. They have the right to own their own wealth, right to work, right to choose who they marry, keep their maiden name, and get a dowry upon being married, so payment that the husband gives to the wife, and right to vote and be politically active. So why do Muslim women cover? So a lot of people, especially in the West, when they see a Muslim woman covering, they assume, well, she must be oppressed, she's being forced to do so. But in Islam, actually, modesty is required for both men and women. And so, there are Orthodox Jewish women who cover their hair. We have the example of Mother Teresa. You won't see any picture of her without her covering her hair. And then we have Jamila Afghani. She covers her hair, and she's a female Muslim scholar from Afghanistan who's also a women's rights activist. So covering your hair has nothing to do with being oppressed. It's actually very empowering to many Muslim women. And Muslim women who do cover, they do it as an act of faith, showing obedience to God, and to be recognized as a woman of faith. That being said, not every Muslim woman necessarily covers, and it's a choice that they make. So gender relations. This is something you should always be aware of when you meet someone of the opposite gender from the Afghan or the Muslim community in general, because many Muslims will not shake hands with someone of the opposite sex. And it's not because there's a fear or distrust, it's just out of respect. So don't feel offended if you put your hand out to shake someone's hand and they don't shake it. It's best when you're not sure whether somebody will shake your hand, just put your hands behind your back or to your side and nod out of respect towards that person. A lot of times people of the opposite gender, they may avoid eye contact. So you might, as a woman, I might be talking to a man. Maybe I'm comfortable looking at someone in the eye, but that man might look down or to another side, and won't make eye contact, and it's out of respect that they do it. And so it has nothing to do with how they feel about you. It's just out of respect. And, people don't want to, Muslims generally don't want to be in a space alone with somebody of the opposite sex. So say you are, taking someone to the grocery store or to go shopping. If you are a female, then and your client or the Afghan you're helping is a male, they might feel uncomfortable with it. And so you should understand that discomfort, and when you can, try to have someone of the same sex there. Usually if you're going with a family and there's a husband and wife, they're okay with whoever's taking them, but just being mindful of that. I wanted to say a little bit about the Muslim community in Nashville. There's over 40,000 Muslims in Middle Tennessee, and it's so diverse. Over 40 nationalities are living here in Nashville. Nashville has a large Kurdish population, about 15 to 20,000, a large Somali population, about 5,000, and then you have Muslim, Arab Muslims, South Asians, other parts of Asia, African-American Muslims who have been here for generations, other African immigrants, Uzbeks, and then we have an Afghan community that has been here since the 80s. So when you drive around Nashville, the areas where you see the most Muslims living is around the Nolensville Pike area, and that's actually known as Little Kurdistan. And another place where you see a lot of Muslim businesses is Murfreesboro Pike corridor. So those are where you would find there are mosques, but then there are also halal meat stores and other stores that serve the needs of the Muslim community. In Nashville alone, there are 9 different mosques. And so you have the Islamic Center of Nashville on 12th South, Islamic Center of Nashville in Bellevue. Islamic Center of Nashville is one of the oldest mosques. And then Masjid al-Islam, it's in North Nashville, and the Salahuddin Center of Nashville, and that serves the Kurdish community on Nolensville Road. Al-Farouk Islamic Center serves the Somali community on 4th Avenue. Islamic Center of Tennessee in Antioch, and the Masjid al-Salam, Masjid al-Huda, both on Murfreesboro Pike, Muslim-American Cultural Center on Jefferson Street. So this is just a little bit of overview about Muslims and Islam and the Muslim community in Nashville. So now I will hand it over to my 2 colleagues, Hangama and Homa. Thank you.
Salam, my name is Aman Wahidi. I'm the chair of the Afghan Association of Nashville. First of all, I just want to say how much we appreciate you guys as volunteers for our new arrival Afghans in Nashville, and how much I have appreciated being in Nashville for the past 36 years and how welcoming Nashville is. Just a few words about Afghans and Afghan cultures, just to help out on how to help them get situated in Nashville and their new lives. As you know, moving from somewhere like Afghanistan, which unfortunately some people call it third world, is very hard to come and get acclimated in a new world of someplace like the United States. Our culture is a little bit different, but at the same time, is a lot different. We are very hospitable people back home. We love our family. We're very family oriented. Most of the times, Afghans families live together until they actually get married, and then they leave the house. So for a lot of Afghans to just get up and leave like they did 3 months ago, and I'm sure it was very, very hard for them to leave families behind. And a lot of them need that support, that encouragement, that they can still continue life here. And there's always future, and I'm sure they will see family again. Culturally, like Afghans, we love our rice, we love our bread, and the food back home is amazing and very different than when they come here. When I helped them a couple of times. I went and helped our new arrivals and took food for them. They were so appreciative of what they saw because they haven't really had that in the last 3 months. So it'd be helpful very much for them to go to the stores that are known as Road that have provide them with the bread that they eat, the rice that they can cook at home. At the beginning, we drink a lot of tea. I mean, 90%, 95% of Afghans really doesn't drink coffee. So for them to come to a new place in a hotel room and have a cup of coffee, I think it would be amazing. They need a lot of things, I know, but at the beginning, the most important would be like a tea kettle, like a tea bag or a thermos and stuff that they can call their own and sit down and talk and drink a cup of tea over it. Our kids, our children are in need of a lot of things, but mainly right now, if you can help them with schooling, send them to school as soon as possible. They're here in an apartment or with nothing, with no TV, with no electronics. So they need help to get out and venture out, perhaps as volunteers, to take them out maybe to the zoo or places like that, because we did have all of that back home, and for suddenly to leave everything behind and come and cooped up in a hotel room or an apartment is very, very hard. We don't have a lot of apartments back home. It's usually houses, so they live with a yard or a backyard so they can come out and play and do kids thing. And here suddenly you're like in one room with 4 other people and grown-ups is hard. People that are here now, most of them are from Kabul, which are educated. They had jobs, they have life, and suddenly to be here, like literally not have anything to do all day, but just sit there, stare at the wall, is very hard for Afghan people, especially our men, because back home we have very highly educated women. We have teachers, doctors, workers, but mainly the work is on men, and they are the providers. So for them to come and just not have anything to do, it'll be helpful to get out, find jobs as soon as possible, connect them with other Afghans. It would be helpful in the long run mentally. I think it would make them very stable instead of sitting there thinking about what they have lost and within the last 3 months. They all had jobs, they had lives, and suddenly it's like nothing. So and for women, they came. Usually when you come, you have suitcases, you have your little belongings, you know what you wear, you bring them with you, but they literally left with nothing on their back. So for women to come here and try to find clothing and try to find what is stylish for them is hard. We do have very diversified clothing back home. You can find women that wear burqas and find women that just wear jeans with a top on and a scarf on their head. So we don't really we have national clothing, but for work and jobs it's very Western. We just make it anybody that want to make it like want to scarf or cover their head because of our religious, they can do that and still wear Western clothing. So it's not very hard for them to find what they need. It's just the time to take them and help them figure it out, what they can wear and how they can find and pay for it. But I think that's all I got right now. If you have any questions, you guys can reach out. Max knows my number, or any one of us can help. I appreciate your time and your effort and volunteering for our new arrivals immensely. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Foma Ramani, and I currently reside in Knoxville, Tennessee. I am an Afghan-American. I moved to the U.S. 1991, 1992, I believe. I was between the ages of 9 or 10 years old. I grew up in Indiana, so I'm a Midwestern girl. And then just life landed us here in Tennessee for the last 5 years. My educational background is in social work, so I have a deep passion for just helping people. And when this new Afghan crisis happened, I knew I needed to step up and help. And I thought the best way to do that was to partner with our resettlement agency and just kind of jump in where there was need. And obviously with the Afghan arrivals here in Knoxville, there's been a lot of language barriers, and we'll get into that a little bit and kind of what I've been doing. But I thought just overall, I could give you guys a little bit of information about Afghans, what our culture is, what our language is, how we dress, and just kind of Afghanistan just in general. I'm going to pull up my presentation. So some of the things that I thought we can talk about would be the Afghan cultural groups. What languages are common among Afghans? As I mentioned, Afghan clothing, culture, who's coming, and then as they've been coming, what are the challenges that they have been facing in settling in their new home country? So there are many cultural groups in Afghanistan, but the most common groups are Pashtuns, Tajiks, and Hazaras. That's who you probably most likely hear a lot about in the news. But we also have additional groups of Turkmen, Uzbeks, Nuristani, Amik, and Baluchi. These are mostly nomad groups who live in rural areas and kind of move from area to area depending on weather, because they're carpet weavers, they're herders. They might come to more central locations to sell their goods for the winter so that they have money for the winter. But typically in the news, the groups that get the most attention, as I've said, are Pashtuns, Tajiks, and Hazaras. Pashtuns typically, as you can see in the map, live in the southern part of Afghanistan. And the Tajiks, which we have lines from both Iran and Tajikistan and Uzbekistan a bit, are in the northern areas. And then the Hazaras are a minority, both in ethnicity and the sect of religion. So most Hazaras in Afghanistan are Shias. And they have probably been persecuted the most among all ethnic groups, and especially under Taliban rule, as majority of Taliban are Pashtuns. So the Hazaras are getting persecuted for just simply being Hazara, and then for being the Shia sect. And then there's this tussle between Tajiks and Pashtun for control of the country. Afghanistan is a beautiful landscape and beautiful country. The war is obviously centralized mostly to the city like Afghanistan or central Afghanistan, but rural Afghanistan and cities surrounding the rural areas are pretty developed and fairly safe, but obviously not, doesn't have the infrastructure. This is the famous Blue Mosque in Mazar Sharif. With that, oh, can I redo that? Because I like started talking, I don't know what I'm supposed to talk about common languages, and I'm like talking about.
Yeah, just redo it. Just start fresh.
Okay. So the common languages in Afghanistan, there's two main official languages, Dari and Pashto, but it is estimated that there's 40 to 59 languages spoken in Afghanistan. Dari and Farsi is mostly spoken among the Tajiks and Uzbeks and Hazaras, and then Pashto is mostly spoken again by the Pashtuns. So the Taliban, majority of them speak Pashto, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Afghan clothing. So Afghan clothes is also very diverse based off of the location of Afghanistan you're from. It's very colorful. It's hand embroidered. We don't wear this clothes on a daily basis. This is for special occasions, weddings, birthdays, new births and that sort, or cultural days like Eid, our festival for Eid. But on a daily basis, it is Western wear, but very conservative. So think of long sleeve shirts, the neck and the chest area being covered with a scarf, either fully covering the head or partially covering the head. And the men also wear jeans and a sweater, or very much Western clothing. But you can see this gentleman has a vest on, and typically green and gold are worn for the wedding. So he's wearing a wedding outfit, and a traditional man's clothing is typically what we call piran tamban, and it's a white long shirt with pants, and then they dress it up with a vest like you see on him. And typically, if he's married, the vest matches his wife's clothing. And I think these kids, it's Eid, which is one of our holidays, they're dressed up at school. But if you're looking to, give them donations, just loose fitting clothing, clothing that are long, below the knee, leggings, and at least, their arms are covered and chest area is covered, and they can't have enough scarves. But clothing does change based off of where in Afghanistan they come from. The core concepts of Afghan culture is hospitality, loyalty, and modesty. So if you talk to anybody that's been to Afghanistan, especially, US soldiers, they're like, it's the most hospitable country we've been to. You get invited to the house and you're treated as a family member. There's this saying that if you have an Afghan that's your friend, you have a friend for life. So we're very loyal in friendship. We mean what we say, and we say what we mean. We like to be truthful and honest with friendships, and we expect that in return. And the culture is very modest as well in terms of clothing and family values. It's keeping your affairs maybe a little private, and it's, people don't overshare what's happening. They kind of wait to be asked and make sure that, they feel comfortable before they share. So, when you're doing assessments with them and when you're talking with them, you might see some hesitancy, but that's just part of that culture, that they don't also want to overwhelm you with everything all at once. And then we, again, have diverse food because of all the ethnic groups and from where all the food originates from. But we're big tea drinkers. We drink green tea and black tea all day long. We make a huge pot and a thermos in the morning and drink it all day long. Some people might add a little bit of sugar to it, but that's pretty much it. We don't add the milk with it. And then the culture, again, the South is a lot of dumplings. Central areas is rice, which is meat-based, chicken, lamb, beef. And then mostly people from the rural areas eat goat, but central Afghanistan, there's not a lot of people that eat goat. They mostly eat a lot of lamb, chicken, and beef. This picture is a typical spread for a evening if you're being hosted in an Afghan house. The national dish is qabli palau, which is the rice with the raisins and the carrots. And then you see mantu to the right of it, and you just see some roasted chicken, spinach, and meatballs. Our meatballs are just flattened and not circular. As you are going out to purchase stuff for the arrivals, I thought this list might be helpful. We're very, very particular about our rice. So in Knoxville, I think they had just bought some, regular rice from the grocery store. So they all called me and they were feeling so bad because they didn't know what to do with the rice. And they're like, this is not the rice we use, but we don't want to waste it. But we're going to go ahead and use it anyway. So when you're looking at rice, Abu Bara or Mother Rice, which is also a company of Abu Bara, you can find these on Nolensville Pike at any of the international stores. This Nazo green tea serves as a green tea, but we also drink a pink tea, which is a little bit more involved, but it makes that as well. So it would be a twofold purpose for them. So if you just got them some rice, tea, bread, eggs, cheese, meat, as long as it's kosher or halal, and then the basics of onions, tomatoes, garlic, and ginger, salt, pepper, cumin, turmeric, and coriander, and sugar are just the basic spices until they can go out shopping on their own. So if you're kind of doing some pre-shopping, this would be a good starter to have in their home for them when they come. So who's coming to the US? Again, very diverse because as most of us saw in the news, the evacuation was chaotic and busy. Some people were supposed to leave, but couldn't get through the gates of the airport. So those who left in the first few days, they came with really large family units. Afghans are, large family units, meaning, 4, 5, 6 kids, especially if, it's a couple that's been married for a while versus a young married couple. And then single parents with or without children. So what has happened is, for example, one family, the mom and the kids are here, but the dad is stuck in Turkey because they were supposed to come to the US before the fall of the government. But the dad went to Turkey to get the paperwork done. When the government fell, the US evacuated the mom and the kids, but now the father can't come. Or a lot of times what the US told the fathers is, well, you leave and then you sponsor your family once you've gotten to the US. So that's sometimes why you'll see like a single father here, and then his wife and kids are in Afghanistan, and he's just hoping to start their paperwork and bring them here as well. Young adults, so anybody 18 plus that come that were able to make it on a flight has come, and then unaccompanied minors. So I don't think Tennessee is going to get any unaccompanied minors. There's only 15 states that are accepting them. And the camp in DC got almost all the unaccompanied minors. I think US is the one who took all of them. And they are processing them differently than I think how some other unaccompanied minors that have came to the US. One is through family reunification. So most of the people that have came have some US ties, meaning they have an aunt, uncle, cousin somewhere across the US that they're trying to reunify them with. And because of the language issues, they think that would just be an easier transition. And I think if the plan is that if they can't reunite them with a family member, then there is a group of Afghan families that are currently being vetted to take on unaccompanied minors. But they're hopeful that they'll be able to get everybody with a relative or an Afghan family. And there's only been 15 states that have bigger resettlement agencies that have been approved to get that group of population. So in the Knoxville area, we've gotten two ethnic groups, which is Tajik and Turkmen. The Turkmen have came here because there were family connections and family ties. So even as part of the resettlement, they are trying to place people in states and locations that they do have some sort of support system that can, help them resettle over time. And then the two pictures I shared on here, this is a family that got resettled in Virginia, and their pictures being used with permission. And then the bottom is the group of all medical sciences program that graduated from Kabul University in 2018. And some of these people are also being relocated because they were just starting their careers. So, just because they're here and they don't understand the language doesn't mean that they didn't have a full life prior to coming here. Most of them have college degrees. Most of them have had extensive work in broadcasting or TV or journalism or diplomacy or medical sciences. So I think part of the challenge is going to be is making sure that these individuals can get their degrees certified and accepted here so that they can, fulfill a career that they had started in their home country. Challenges being faced by arrivals. So the main one is language. I think if you can't understand everything that's happening, it's hard to make decisions. It's hard to know what to do. And obviously with language, there's a lot of cultural misunderstandings that's going to be hard for them to understand. So it's really, really important to get a translator or somebody that can really explain things well to them and help them understand what they're signing, what the process of resettlement is, how long they're going to be supported by the resettlement agency, what type of help is afforded to them through the resettlement agency, and kind of what they would have to do on their own. Specifically, some resettlement agencies will work through with families with helping them all the way to doing their immigration paperwork, and some resettlement agencies will not. And for most people, their biggest concern is immigration, bringing their families who were left behind. So making sure you're very upfront with them about what is being offered to them, for how long, and what the resettlement agency can do in a realistic way. I think the more coherent and clear you are in the beginning, the less of challenges arise through the resettlement process. Affordable housing. We know that's an issue across the US, but I think when placing them, it's really, really important to make sure that once the resettlement funds run out, they are able to afford that housing and not have to then move in 3 or 4 or 5 months or have to break a contract. And their main concern is that they're being located in a safe and secure area. So as I'm talking with them and I'm telling them, well, they found a permanent housing for you, their first question is, I have young kids, is it a safe area? We left Afghanistan, but we don't want to come here, and God forbid something happens. So I think including them in that conversation would be really, really important as well, because they just need to feel in control of that decision-making process as well. Transportation, obviously, Tennessee requires that you, based off of how, everything is in different areas, and the public transportation isn't as developed, say as New York or Utah. It's really important to think through sustainability of helping them get their license and permit and have their own transportation so they can start relying on themselves. Because they're kind of homebound and stuck to whoever can kind of be available to help them. So we've had, a few cases here where they've had really sick kiddos, and trying to find somebody to take them to the hospital or urgent care has been an issue, and I suspect that will continue to be an issue. So it's really important to think about how to get them independent in that department. And then employment and living wages. And we know, they're coming here and they're just wanting to make money and work, but it's really important to think about, if only the father is working or if only the mother is working, can they sustain their life with what the money they'll have after the aid through the resettlement agency runs out. So it's really, really important to figure out what a living wage is. And because of the cost difference, no one has really ever done a budget in Afghanistan, because when I talk to them about a budget, they're like, oh yeah, we've heard you guys do it in America, but how does it work? And really sitting and giving them papers and talking through what a budget should look like, how they should think through it, would be really, really important. And then immigration, and we talked about this a little bit, but a lot of them do have family back home that they want to get here, especially those, whose husband is back home or their wife is back home and their kids are back home. So it's really important to just ease their anxieties and kind of let them know what you can do for them if you have that option or the resource available to them, because they are more interested in getting that process started more than anything else. And then just trust, right? I mean, it's a brand new country, it's new people, lots of moving faces. They went into camps, and then some of them came into temporary housing and now going into permanent housing. And there's so much, your landlord and your electricity company and all of this. So as much of this you can have in writing, as much of this you can have somebody who speaks the language and clearly explain to them, will really help build that trust. And importantly, getting people of the same culture and same language involved early on in their resettlement will really, really help that process. So by the time I personally went, through the checks and getting involved with the arrivals here in Knoxville, some had arrived and were here for about a week or two. After they got to know me, they called me, they're like, I'm so glad I have you. I'm so glad I can talk to you. And they just need that. They just need to know somebody else has gone through this and they've survived it and they've made it. And just having somebody to share their experience with as to what they went through. Because some of the families after the second visit, they shared their whole ordeal, and the case manager said, well, they haven't shared that with me. And part of that is, right, just sitting down and saying, well, I'm glad you're here. What's on your mind? And sometimes some of them don't want to talk about it because it was such a traumatic experience. I never asked them to show me pictures or tell me what happened. I really just followed their lead. If they want to share, I'm sitting there and willing to listen. But if they don't bring it up, I just kind of leave it at, if you need anything at all, you reach out to me and you let me know. So it's really important to make sure that not only are we just meeting the needs of their physical needs, like, transportation and housing and all of that, but also giving them a safe space to be like, I went through this really horrible experience, and getting them friends that they can share that with. So I would really, really, really encourage you to get the Muslim community involved as soon as you can, so that they can start to build community relations and build friendships beyond just the basics of their needs. And that's all I have.